She did it, he shouted, and everyone believed him. I thought I was in serious trouble until her father checked the camera. What he saw shocked all of us, and that's when the truth finally came out. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from, because this story will keep you hooked until the very end. My name is Maya Harrison, and I'm 14 years old. I've always been the responsible one in my family. My parents trust me to watch the house when they step out, help my little brother with homework, and take care of my things. I try hard to be careful because I know how quickly trust can be lost. My younger brother, Leo, is 12. He's smart, funny, and sometimes sweet, but he also gets into trouble a lot. He loves video games, hates chores, and has a habit of breaking his gadgets. Whenever something goes wrong, he finds a way to make excuses. And more often than not, my mother lets him off easy. Being the youngest, he knows how to turn on the charm and play innocent. Most of the time, our fights are the normal kind of sibling stuff. We argue about who gets the last slice of pizza or who has to take out the trash. It can get loud, but it usually blows over fast. I never imagined he'd go so far as to set me up for something I didn't do. That week, Leo had been glued to his phone nonstop. He used it for games, videos, and talking with friends. He carried it everywhere, even to the dinner table. Her father had warned him several times. If you don't start taking care of that thing, it won't last. Leo would roll his eyes and keep scrolling. I could tell something bad was coming, but I didn't think I'd be the one blamed when it finally happened. One Saturday afternoon, the argument began. I was at the kitchen table doing homework when I heard Leo groaning from the living room. "No, no, no," he shouted. I peeked around the corner and saw him holding his phone. The screen cracked like a spiderweb. He looked panicked, muttering, "Dad's going to kill me." I didn't say anything. I figured he'd have to explain himself sooner or later. I had no idea that instead of owning up, he was about to make me the scapegoat. Leo didn't say much after his phone broke. He sat on the couch staring at the cracked screen, chewing on his lip like he was working out a plan. I went back to my homework, thinking he was just upset. But while I was upstairs getting a book from my room, he crept in quietly behind me. I didn't notice at the time, but later I realized that was the moment he shoved his broken phone under my bed. I came back down to the kitchen, sat at the table, and kept studying. A few minutes later, Leo stormed in, his face red, eyes wide, and his voice loud enough to make me jump. "Mom, Dad." Maya broke my phone. I spun around so fast my chair screeched against the floor. "What are you talking about?" "I didn't touch your phone." Her father walked in from the garage, wiping his hands with a rag, and my mother followed from the laundry room. They both looked at Leo first. He held up the phone with its shattered screen like it was evidence in a crime. "Look, it's broken." I found it in Maya's room under her bed. My heart dropped. "What? No way. That's not true. I never saw your phone and it definitely wasn't under my bed." My mother's eyes narrowed and she turned toward me. "Maya, this is serious. That phone cost us a lot of money and you know how many times we told you both to be careful with electronics." I stood, my hands trembling. "I didn't do it. He's lying. I don't even go near his stuff. Why would I break his phone and then hide it under my bed? That doesn't even make sense." Leo crossed his arms, leaning into his role. "You were mad at me yesterday because I wouldn't let you use the TV. You got back at me by smashing my phone. Just admit it." "Maya?" My jaw dropped. "That's insane. I never touched your phone. Stop lying." Her father looked from Leo to me, his face unreadable. "Leo, are you saying you're certain you saw Maya with your phone?" "Yes," Leo insisted, his voice breaking like he was about to cry. "I left it on the table and then it disappeared. Later, when I looked in her room, there it was under her bed, cracked. She had to have done it." My stomach churned. It was his word against mine, and I could already see the doubt in my parents' faces. Tears welled in my eyes, but I forced myself to speak clearly. "Dad, Mom, I swear I didn't do this. I was in the kitchen the whole time." "If he says he found it under my bed, that's because he put it there himself." My mother shook her head, her voice sharp. "Maya, don't make things worse by lying. If you made a mistake, just say it. We'll be upset, but lying about it will only make it harder to trust you." The words cut deep. My mother had always trusted me, and now she thought I was lying. "I'm not lying," I shouted, my voice cracking. "I didn't break his phone. Leo sniffled loudly and buried his face in his hands, pretending to cry. Why are you blaming me, Maya? You're supposed to be my sister. His fake tears made me sick to my stomach. I felt trapped. No matter what I said, he twisted it around to make himself look like the victim. Her father sighed heavily, his voice low and serious. This is disappointing. We raised you better than this, Maya. If you broke something, you need to be honest about it. My chest tightened. Dad, please believe me. I didn't do it. He's setting me up. Because he doesn't want to admit he broke it himself. Why won't you see that? The room was tense, my words hanging in the air. My parents exchanged a look, their doubt clear. I wanted to scream, to cry, to make them understand, but I knew anything I did would just make me look more guilty. Leo sniffled again, his voice trembling in perfect fake sorrow. She just hates me. That's why she did it. I didn't want to tell you, but I couldn't hide it anymore. I felt the walls closing in. Everyone's eyes were on me, and for the first time, I realized I might not be able to talk my way out of this. My own brother had turned my parents against me, and it broke something inside me to see them hesitate, unsure whether to believe me or him. That was the moment I knew I needed more than my words to prove the truth. I stood there shaking, my hands clenched at my sides, my throat raw from defending myself. Nothing I said seemed to matter. My mother's eyes were full of disappointment. Her father's silence was heavy, and Leo's fake tears kept pulling sympathy his way. My own brother had cornered me with his lie, and I could feel myself losing. That's when something in me snapped, not with anger, but with determination. If they wouldn't believe my words, they would have to believe the truth. Fine, I said firmly, forcing my voice to steady, even though my chest was tight. If you don't believe me, then check the cameras. Her father looked up, frowning slightly. What cameras? The hallway cameras, I replied quickly. You installed them last year after the break and scare. One points right toward my room. If I broke Leo's phone and hid it under my bed, it will show. And if I didn't, that will show too. The room fell quiet. Leo froze for the first time since this started. His act slipped. His sniffles stopped mid-sound, and he looked at me with wide eyes before glancing nervously at her father. My mother shook her head, her arms still crossed tightly. Maya, that's not necessary. We already found the phone in your room. I stepped forward, desperate, but steady. Yes, it is necessary, because I didn't put it there. I didn't touch his phone and the camera will prove it. Unless you're afraid of what it's going to show. Leo's face flushed. This is ridiculous. Why are you wasting everyone's time? Just admit you did it. Her father raised a hand, silencing both of us. His voice was calm but firm. Enough. If Maya wants us to check the footage, then we'll check it. If she's lying, the truth will come out. And if Leo's lying, that will come out too. Leo's jaw tightened, his arms stiff at his sides. Dad, that's stupid. You won't see anything. His words were sharp, but his voice cracked slightly, betraying the fear he was trying to hide. I caught that crack in his tone, and it gave me hope. My heart was pounding, but now it wasn't from fear. It was from the possibility that I could finally clear my name. My mother still looked uncertain, glancing at Leo like she wanted to believe him, but her father was already moving. Come on, he said, motioning toward the living room where the main screen connected to the camera system. We all followed, the sound of our footsteps echoing in the tense silence. My palms were sweaty, my knees weak, but I forced myself to walk tall. Leo dragged behind us, muttering under his breath, "This is a waste of time." We reached the living room, and her father grabbed the remote from the coffee table. He switched on the large screen mounted on the wall, bringing up the camera feed menu. The glow of the monitor lit the room, casting everyone's faces in pale light. Which one? Her father asked, scrolling through the list. The upstairs hallway, I said quickly. It points right at the doors. He selected it and the footage loaded. My breath caught as the video played, the timestamp showing yesterday afternoon. I could feel Leo's energy shift beside me. He was bouncing his knee nervously, his arms crossed tighter than ever. His eyes stayed locked on the floor instead of the screen. That was when I knew I was right to fight back. Her father fast-forwarded until he found the window of time when Leo claimed the phone had been discovered. We all leaned in. The footage showed me leaving my room with a notebook in my hands, heading downstairs. A few minutes later, Leo appeared, clutching his phone in both hands. He looked around quickly, checking if anyone was nearby, then slipped into my room. Moments later, he came out empty-handed, wiping his palms on his shorts before darting down the hall. Pause, her father said, his voice sharp. He stared at the screen, then turned slowly toward Leo. My heart felt like it had leapt into my throat. There it was, proof, clear as day. My chest filled with relief so strong, I nearly burst into tears. My mother gasped, covering her mouth with her hand. Leo, is that you? What did you do? Leo stammered, his face red, his voice small. I don't know. It's not what it looks like. But we all knew exactly what it looked like. I turned to him, my voice trembling, but strong. You lied. You tried to frame me. Leo's shoulders slumped, and for the first time, he had no words. Her father's voice was like stone. We're watching the rest, and then we'll talk about consequences. But Maya, you were right. You trusted the truth, and it spoke louder than anything else. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt seen. The footage played in real time, the seconds dragging by heavier than minutes. On the screen, Leo's movements were undeniable. He clutched his phone, glanced both ways like he was sneaking into forbidden territory, and slipped into my room. He emerged less than a minute later, his hands empty, his face nervous. The evidence was clear as daylight. No tricks, no excuses. For a long moment, no one spoke. The room was filled only with the faint hum of the television. I stood there, my chest rising and falling fast, my heart racing with relief. My parents' eyes were fixed on the screen, wide with disbelief. Leo looked smaller than I had ever seen him, his shoulders slumped, his lips pressed tight like he was holding back a flood of words. Her father turned first, his voice low but cutting. Leo, explain this. Leo's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. His face burned red, and his eyes darted everywhere except at me. Finally, he stammered. It's not what it looks like. I let out a bitter laugh, half out of anger, half out of sheer exhaustion. Not what it looks like. You put your phone under my bed. We all saw it. You lied to Mom and Dad, and you let them believe I broke it. My mother's hand was pressed against her mouth, her eyes brimming with shock. She lowered it slowly and turned to Leo, her voice shaking. Leo, you told me she smashed your phone. You swore she was lying when she said she didn't. Do you realize what you just did? Tears welled in his eyes and his voice cracked. I didn't mean for it to get this bad. I didn't want to get in trouble. I was scared. Her father's expression hardened. So, you thought the solution was to frame your sister? To destroy her trust with us just to save yourself? His voice was calm, but underneath I could hear the disappointment that cut deeper than anger. Leo's tears spilled over. He dropped his face into his hands. I didn't think you'd actually believe me. I thought you'd figure it out. I don't know. I just panicked. His words made my stomach twist. For days, I had been carrying the weight of his lie, doubted by my own parents, humiliated by their disappointment. And now he was saying he didn't even expect them to believe him. That only made the betrayal sting more. I took a step forward, my voice trembling with emotion. You didn't just panic, Leo. You stood there and looked me in the eye while blaming me. You watched me beg Mom and Dad to believe me, and you kept lying. Do you know how that felt? He sobbed harder, his shoulders shaking. I'm sorry, Maya. I really am. I didn't mean to hurt you like that, but his apology didn't bring relief. It felt hollow, empty, too late. The trust that had cracked between us couldn't be glued back together with one sorry. Her father finally spoke again, his voice firm and final. This isn't just about a phone, Leo. Phones can be replaced. Trust cannot. You've broken your sister's trust, and you've broken ours. That is much worse than a cracked screen. My mother's eyes filled with tears, too, though hers were from anger and disappointment. I defended you. I accused your sister because I believed you. Do you know how awful it feels to realize I was siding with a lie? Leo shook his head, his voice small. I just didn't want to get yelled at. Her father sighed deeply, rubbing his forehead. Well, you'll face a lot more than yelling now. There will be consequences, and you need to understand exactly why. I stood silently, torn between relief that I had finally been cleared and sorrow that my own brother had done this to me. I had wanted so badly for my parents to see the truth, and now that they had, it left me hollow, vindicated, but also heartbroken. Her father looked at me, his eyes softening. Maya, I'm sorry we doubted you. You stood your ground when it felt like the whole house was against you. That takes courage. I nodded, wiping at the tears I hadn't realized were sliding down my cheeks. I just wanted you to believe me. That's all. My mother pulled me into a hug, whispering, "We do now. We'll never forget this." When she let go, I glanced at Leo. He was still sitting hunched over, his hands covering his face, his body shaking with quiet sobs. For the first time, I didn't feel angry. I just felt tired. Tired of the lies, the accusations, the games. "You hurt me, Leo," I said softly. "More than you realize. Phones can be fixed, but what you broke between us will take a lot longer." His cries grew louder, but I couldn't bring myself to comfort him. Not yet. The truth was out, his lie exposed. And in that moment, the balance shifted. I wasn't the guilty one anymore. He was. And nothing would ever erase what had happened. After the truth came out, the atmosphere in the living room shifted completely. The weight I had carried for what felt like forever suddenly lifted. But in its place was a deep ache. Being proven innocent felt like a victory, but it didn't erase the sting of knowing my own brother had been willing to throw me under the bus just to save himself. Her father switched off the monitor, setting the remote down with a firmness that said the discussion wasn't over. He turned to Leo, who still sat hunched over, his face buried in his hands. "You're grounded," her father said, his voice steady but sharp. "No phone, no games, no sleepovers for a month, and you'll be doing extra chores around the house." Leo sniffled, his words muffled. "Okay." But her father wasn't finished. "More importantly, you're going to write a letter to your sister apologizing for what you did. You didn't just break a phone, Leo. You broke her trust." "That's far worse." My mother sighed heavily, her eyes still red with emotion. She turned to me, her voice softer. "Maya, I'm sorry for doubting you. I should have listened more carefully. I let my frustration get in the way, and I accused you when I shouldn't have." Her apology made tears prick my eyes again. But this time, they were from relief. "I just wanted you to believe me," I whispered. "It hurt so much that you thought I could lie like that." My mother pulled me into a hug, holding me tight. "We'll do better," she said. "You didn't deserve that." As comforting as her words were, I knew things wouldn't go back to normal right away. Something between Leo and me had cracked, and no amount of apologies could fix it overnight. Later that night, when the house was quiet, he knocked softly on my door. I hesitated before answering, and when I did, he stood there with swollen eyes and a crumpled piece of paper in his hand. He handed it to me silently. I unfolded it and read his handwriting. "I'm sorry for lying about the phone. I was scared and didn't want to get in trouble, but that doesn't excuse what I did. I know I hurt you, and I hope one day you can forgive me." I looked up at him, unsure of what to say. Part of me wanted to slam the door. Part of me wanted to believe he meant it. Instead, I simply said, "Thank you for writing it." Then, I closed the door gently. Forgiveness would take time, and I wasn't ready yet. Over the next few weeks, Leo kept his head down. He did chores without complaining, stayed off games, and even helped around the house more than usual. I could see he was trying, but the shadow of what he had done lingered. Every time I looked at him, I remembered the humiliation, the fear, the way my parents' eyes had turned cold when they thought I was guilty. Trust wasn't something you could glue back together with good behavior. It had to be rebuilt piece by piece. For me, the whole experience left a scar, but also a lesson. I realized that lies, no matter how convincing, eventually collapse under the truth. Leo had shouted, cried, and pointed fingers. And for a while, everyone believed him. But in the end, the evidence spoke louder than his performance. And I learned that sometimes staying calm and asking for the truth to speak is stronger than yelling to defend yourself. I also learned something about my parents. They loved me, but even they could be swayed by appearances. It reminded me that no matter how much trust you build, it can be shaken in an instant. It made me stronger, more determined to always stand by what I know is right, even if it feels like the world is against me. As for Leo, our relationship slowly healed. We still argued about silly things, like who finished the cereal or who left the lights on, but he never tried anything like that again. I think facing the cameras, our parents' disappointment, and my anger taught him a lesson he won't forget. He realized lies can buy you time, but they always cost more in the end. Looking back now, I don't just remember the fear or the anger. I remember the strength it took to stand my ground, the courage to demand proof, and the relief of finally being believed. I came out of it not just as a sister who was framed, but as someone who proved to herself that truth is powerful, even when it feels fragile. So, if you've ever been blamed for something you didn't do, remember this: truth may take time to show, but when it does, it has the power to silence every lie. And I want to hear from you. Have you ever been falsely accused? Share your story in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more powerful stories where the truth always wins.